Welcome to the second lecture of the course. This course will address the French and Indian War. As the 18th century rolled along, both France and Britain's settlements in North America grew in importance to their respective nations and empires. The French fur trading network in present-day Canada was immensely lucrative and was continuously expanding to include new territory and new native trading partners. New France extended throughout the Great Lakes region, much of present-day Canada, and into the Mississippi River Valley, all the way to their settlement at New Orleans. While the French did not focus on heavily populated settlements, their small settlements gained considerable influence with their neighboring native allies, with whom they conducted their fur trading. New France numbered only around 75,000 colonists when the French and Indian War broke out, mostly men, as few families endured the harsh life in the north. Contrary to the French situation, the English colonies were blossoming by the 1750s, as we've seen in our textbook readings. Now from New England to the Chesapeake, English settlements and their respective populations were exploding. As the war neared, English settlement in North America topped 1.5 million in population. The colonies were enjoying diverse economic growth as the colonists were hard at work to develop strong, permanent settlements. These two colonial empires could not have been more different. The English outnumbered the French some 20 to 1 in the New World, while the French enjoyed a very close relationship with the natives. As the 1750s began, these two entities would come into conflict with another and erupt a global war. The spark for this conflict would come from an all too familiar figure in a now quite familiar place. The intersection between the French and British territories saw the two colliding at the forks of the Ohio River. The intersection of the Allegheny and the Monongahela rivers coming together to create the Ohio River served as one of the most strategically important locations in the always important Ohio country. As the British set out to scout this place and the nearby French Fort Duquesne, a young George Washington inevitably started a war when he and his men attacked a French patrol. That patrol would end up being a group of diplomats and not soldiers. The grievance would not soon be forgotten by the French and their native allies. Known as the Battle of Jumonville Glen, the first true shots of the war. Washington and his men were quickly chased down by French and native soldiers and surrounded at the hastily constructed Fort Necessity. The very young George Washington would lose this first encounter of the war and forecast numerous early British defeats. The ensuing war would last from 1754 to 1763 and involve a number of campaigns in French Canada, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio country. The early years of the war were characterized by numerous French victories. This can be attributed to their alliance with the natives, most notably the Iroquois Confederacy, as well as failure by the British to understand warfare in the New World. These early defeats include the defeat of General Braddock at Fort Duquesne and the surrender of the British at Fort William Henry. The war would turn around in the late 1750s as the British naval blockade of North America prohibited the reinforcement of New France by her mother country, as well as a breakdown of the alliance between the French and her native allies. The French would eventually learn how to fight in the backwoods of the New World, and the following years were punctuated by British victories. The final capture of Fort Duquesne at the forks of the Ohio and the surrender of Montreal to the British signaled the end of hostilities in North America. It also signaled the end of any real French presence on the continent. French Canada would become part of the British Empire in North America. The French would maintain their small settlement in New Orleans and some small presence in the Caribbean. The aftermath for the British colonies would be long-lasting and quite painful. The French and Indian War was just a part of the global 7 Years' War fought between France and Great Britain. This war was incredibly costly and doubled the British royal debt. The Crown, in an attempt to pay for this debt, would look to bring the colonies into the fold of the empire as full citizens and participants. This meant taxation. The Crown also took the governance of its now expanded territory more seriously and enacted a number of laws and ordinances in the New World, starting with the Proclamation of 1763. The Proclamation of 1763 was one of the first laws enacted by the Crown that created distress in the colonies. The proclamation was threefold in its purpose. First, it forbid the settlement of any land west of the Appalachian Mountains. This range formed the de facto proclamation line and the limit of colonial settlement. Second, the sale of all land in the colonies was now forcibly handled by the Crown itself and its colonial agents. Colonists now were told where they could and could not settle, as well as when and where they could buy and sell land. Third, it mandated that all trade with native peoples be regulated and confirmed through royal agents. All of this greatly worried and enraged the colonists, as they had been used to near self-government for their entire existence. Now the British royal government was slowly beginning to interfere in their lives, and they did not like it. The aftermath of the French and Indian War would set up all of the conditions necessary for the American Revolution to take place in the coming years.